Hi guys, welcome to Dear Dev. We're looking at fun ways to use JavaScript and today we are blowing up a balloon. Okay, let's dive in. I have my HTML page that shows a wrapper holding a balloon and its controls. And my controls are supposed to increase or reduce the size of the balloon. And here's our pretty little balloon here. Now we are in our script.js. We have two values, 300 and we have 20. We are using them to indicate the maximum size our balloon should go and the minimum size our balloon should go. We are using const here to define the variable because we don't expect the values to change. Const holds values that remain constant. We are not going to be changing them. So that is why it is favorable for us to use max size as constant and min size as constants, because we are not going to be changing the maximum size or the minimum size the balloon should be. We might be changing other things, but the maximum size and minimum size are constant for us. Now, we want to make sure that as we click the plus button, the size of the balloon increases. We need to place an event listener on the button, something that watches and waits and says, has this button been clicked? If this button has been clicked, do this. So our plus button, if you look at our index.html, our plus button has a class of up. So I'm going to be using document.querySelector to get the button that we want to start clicking on. So we are going to be using const plus button. We don't expect the plus button to change. Other things might change around the page, but there's always just the plus button that is supposed to increase the size of the balloon. So I'm using const for that as well, because I'm expecting immutability. I'm not expecting it to change. So I say my plus button is going to be document the query selector. And what I'm trying to get is up. Document the query selector goes into the DOM, goes into the document, goes into the HTML page to look for anything that has a class of up. Because I'm using dots here, it means I'm referring to a class of up, and gets it for me. That's the plus button. Then I now say, this plus button, I want to add an event listener to it. What event am I listening for? I'm waiting for a click. As soon as there's a click on the button, do something. In event listeners, we add a callback function, the function that will be called if the button is clicked. So let me call my function blow up. That's the function I want to call every time I click my button. But I have not created my function, so it means I have to go back and create my function called blow up. So I'm not expecting my function to change it, so I'm using a const for it as well. Now I'm also expecting that when I click on my minus button, that the size of the button should reduce. So it means that I have to add an event listener to that button as well, so that as soon as the button is clicked, the balloon shrinks. But that means we need to first define our minus button that we're going to add the event listener to. So I'm using const as well because I'm not expecting the element I'm bringing up to change. Minus button. So again, we are going into the DOM to go and find any element that has a class of down. Then we want to add an event listener to that button that we have picked up. So we say minus button dot add event listener. When there is a click, do something. So I'm calling my function shrink. Do not forget that when you're using a callback, you're using a function is an argument in another function. When you're using a callback, you do not need to use parentheses in front of the function because it is already known to be a function. So the way to only be used is to be called. So you don't need to call what is already called. So we are not using parentheses there. So we have not defined our shrink function. We need to define that. It's a const as well because I'm not expecting the function to change. It is immutable. We are not using anything to change the value. The value remains the way it is. Shrink will be equal to I like arrow functions. There are different ways to define functions, but using something that looks like an arrow, your equal sign, and the angle bracket, that's an arrow function. So the name of the function is shrink, and then we want to define something inside. So I have an event listener that takes in a click event. As soon as the click happens, it calls the callback function called shrink in case of minus button. And in case of the plus button, it's calling the callback function called blow up. So we're either blowing up or we are shrinking. So now we want to say that every time plus button is clicked, we want the balloon to blow up. But we have not defined our balloon here. Nothing is relating to the balloon. So let's get the balloon. We need to define our balloon. What is our balloon? What's the identifier our balloon has? Our balloon has an ID of balloon. So we will be calling that query selector. Now what we are dealing with is an ID. So we are going to be using our pound sign to get the ID. And the ID is balloon. So now that we have our balloon, we want to increase its size. What is the initial balloon size then, or how are we going to increase it? So we need to first get the existing size of the balloon, then it can be increased. So we need to define. Right now, I will say balloon size. I'm using let for my balloon size because I'm expecting it to change. I use const for the max size, min size, balloon, plus balloon, even minus balloon because they are immutable. I don't expect the value to change. A variable stores information, it stores data. But now const is holding a variable that will not change, while let is holding a variable that's likely to change. I have defined balloon size to determine the size, the initial size of the balloon before we determine how to make it bigger or smaller. But if you look at my balloon size, I said balloon.style. I'm trying to get the style of the balloon and then get the font size in the style. Let's look at why I'm not going to use that, even though I wrote it there. Console.log balloon size. If you go to our page, our console that is logging something on line 6 shows empty. It means that it cannot pick the balloon size. So the way to pick the balloon size is the second part that has been written. We are not going to be using balloon.style.font size. No. What we are going to be using is windows.getComputed_style. That gives us the value of what we are looking for, then we can do what we want with it. So I am naming it pixel size. So I get computed style, window.getComputed style of balloon. And you have to put the element you are trying to get is computed style because the style has been computed by the DOM. So when I get the computed style of the balloon, I say, okay, out of all the styles I have computed, get me the property value of font size. And so that's what is given to me. But I named it pixel size because it comes as something.pixel or something rem. To be sure that that's what it's giving us, let's console log that also. It's supposed to give us a string. If we come here, we see 30 pixels. We want to increase the size of something, like add to it. If you're trying to add to it, we can't add to something that is a string. So we need to convert it into a number or a float. Because we can decide to make a font size something pixels, then I will make it into a float. So I will say balloon size. I'm expecting it to change, so I'm using let. It is not immutable. It can always change. So I say pass float. I'm passing it as a float because I'm expecting that I might choose to use decimals for my balloon size. So I'm saying pass float of pixel size. So take the pixel size that is a string and turn it into a float for me. That is something that can take in decimals. So right now, if I console.log my balloon size, it should give me a number, not a string. So now that we are logging our balloon size to the console, let's increase the size of the balloon on click of the button. So let's update our blow up function. We want to increase the size of the balloon, let's say by 20 pixels. So we'll say on click of the plus button, we are going to adjust our blow up function and say balloon size, please increase by 20. So when we increase size by 20, we need to update the element. So let's pick the element. We are picking the style property of the element and changing the font size of the style. In CSS, we say font-size, but when we come to JavaScript to change that same style, we use camel case, we don't use dash. So we come and say the font size will be equal to, using string literal, because we want to use a variable to generate string. So using string literal, we say, so let's test our increase to see if it works. When we click the plus button, we expect the size of the balloon to increase, and it's actually increasing. So let's use the same thing for our minus button, that when we click on it, we want the size of the balloon to reduce. So here, we're going to make it a minus. So when we are increasing the size of the balloon, we add 20 each time. When we are reducing the size of the balloon, we reduce 20 each time. Let's test it also to see whether it works. So let's first increase it. It works. Then we can shrink it. And it works. So I am copying what I have in blow up and almost replicating it in shrink, because the only thing we are doing is just to reduce the size. I'm using max size and min size because I don't want the balloon to grow indefinitely. We want it to get to a point where it can stop, and we don't want it to shrink indefinitely. We want it to get to a point where it can also stop. We come to our function and define a condition. A condition that says, if something happens, do this. Or if it rains, take an umbrella. If it's sunny, take a handkerchief. So my condition here is, if the balloon is higher than 300 pixels, then let's blow up the balloon. As soon as it is bigger than the max size, please blow it up. So we say balloon.innerText blow up sign, and then return it to the small size since it's now blown up. We don't expect the blown balloon to still be large. So we console log the balloon size to know whether our balloon blew up when it's supposed to blow up. We have a balloon size of 30. We are increasing, we're increasing, we're increasing. So as soon as it got to 310, I believe, because after 290, when we add 20, it becomes 310, it blows up. So let's see. Uh-oh. Why is the size of the balloon still increasing, even though the pop is not increasing? That's where we come to talk about remove event listener. So we added an event waiting for the click of the button, that when you click the button, increase the size. But now that the balloon is blown up, why is the event listener still working? We need to say, okay, now that the balloon is blown, we don't need you to do anything anymore. So we come here and remove the event listener. Don't wait for a click anymore. When you hear the click, ignore, because the balloon is already blown up. So we come and remove event listener. And what is listening for the events? The plus button. So now we are going to remove the event listener from the plus button. The event we are listening for is the click event. And that's what we want to remove. We want to remove the function added to that event listener, the callback function. So what are we removing? We are removing blow up. We are not calling the function because it's a callback function. It's going to be called by default. So removing the event listener, when it blows up, we don't expect the size of the balloon to keep changing. So let's remove and see. It blows up and the size does not change because we removed the event listener. So it's not listening for any event anymore as soon as the balloon blows up. So that's without increasing the size of our balloon. Now we want to shrink it. And we don't want it to shrink below a particular point. Coming to our shrink function, we also want to add a condition. A condition that checks if the size of the balloon has gone beneath a particular size. As we discussed, taking your umbrella when it rains. So we say that if the size goes below, then let's just get air because it shrunk. And we also want to make sure that the font size of the shrunken balloon is also adjusted. Let's test what we have. We have our balloon that is increasing. Now we want to reduce the size. Yes, it shrunk to air. So now, don't forget that we need to remove the event listener, because if we console log our balloon size, the same thing will be happening. Meaning that the event is still being listened to. We increase it, then we reduce it. It shrunk, but we still have it's going to negative. We don't want negative size for our balloon. So we need to remove the event listener. As soon as we shrink the balloon, we say, please, minus button, stop listening for the event. And the event we are listening for is the click event. And the callback function that the click event is referring to is the shrink callback function. As soon as it blows, please ignore. So let's test to be sure that we are not still reducing. Let's increase. Oh no, we want to reduce. So let's reduce. Let's shrink. Oh, it's no longer listening for the event. So it stopped at 30. Because if we remove any extra 20 pixels, it goes to 10. And we said we know the minimum size of the balloon to be 20. So let's check our plus button to be sure that everything is fine. Uh-oh. I'm clicking on the plus button and the air is increasing. That was not the plan. We are not supposed to be listening for a click event after the balloon is burst or shrunken. So it means that while we are removing the event listener on the minus button, then we are supposed to also remove the event listener on the plus button because it's still waiting for the click. And we don't have any balloon to enlarge. So we need to remove the event listener there as well. So we say, plus button, we don't want you to listen for any event after the balloon is shrunken. And what is the plus button doing? The callback function is calling blow up. So we are removing the blow up. Don't blow up anything because we don't have any balloon to blow up. We need to do the same thing on the other side because even after the balloon is burst, it might still shrink. It bursts. When we go to the minus button, what's going on? So it means that we also need to remove the event listener after the balloon blows up. So we remove event listener for under the blow up condition as well. So don't just remove the event listener for the plus button, but remove that for the minus button. When we click, after the balloon burst, please don't show anything. Don't shrink, don't enlarge. And we are good. So now, when we increase, it increases. When we shrink, it shrinks. And when it turns to air, nothing is supposed to happen because we don't have any other balloon to work with. So if we reload our page, want to test it for the enlargement button as well. When we enlarge and it blows up, nothing else should happen, whether we click on the minus or the plus button. So what we have learned right now is that we can store data in containers called variables. When the variables are going to change, we define them using lets. But if they are immutable, we don't expect them to change, then we define them using consts. And then when we want something to happen based on something else, those are conditionals, and we use our if statement. We say, if something happened, do this. If it's not the only conditional we have, we are going to look into other conditionals. But right now, the conditional we use is an if statement saying that if the balloon size is bigger than the max size we have defined, then burst the balloon. We have also realized that we can listen for events on elements. And the event we listen for is a click event, saying that when we click a button, blow up the balloon. And our event listener accepted a callback function. That is a function that will be handled as soon as the event happens. And don't also forget that when we were done with blowing up or shrinking the balloon, we had to remove the event listener so the event does not keep running when there's nothing to run on. So this can be used in different ways. Like in instances where you are trying to check the size of your shopping cart. You don't want your shopping cart to go bigger than a particular size. And when it gets to a particular size, you can stop users from adding other items to the shopping cart and all. Also, if you decide to develop a game, you could say, when the user's life goes lower than a particular amount, then game over. So there are many ways to use this fun JavaScript experiment we just performed. I want to know about the other experiments that you have implemented with JavaScript. Drop them in the comment section below. And if you are going to be using this experiment and blowing up more balloons, also let me know how it went. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so that we can get more of these videos. I look forward to seeing you some other time. Bye-bye.